All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's already 10 minutes past 2, and we have a few of the members that had already registered for the webinar and session. So in terms of time, we need to start. The rest will join us as we move on. So all of you who have joined the call, you're welcome. And to join in, just a moment. Sorry, I was having echoes here, but it's now fine. So saying thank you all that have joined in the call and the capacity building webinar. Yes? Was someone saying something? All right, so we are going to start our session shortly. And for those that are joining in, thank you so much. The capacity building program, like we shall later on get to know, is a series of sessions that we shall be having from the SRHR Alliance to support different organizations, both youth-led, youth-serving, government agencies, but even individuals who want to pursue their career, but also improve their programming skills in terms of SRHR programming. So that is just briefly about it. And for today's webinar, we are looking at meaningful youth participation as a pillar to inclusive SRHR programming. And I'll later on introduce our speaker, our facilitator of the day later on, and we shall have different engagements. Just before we start, if you want to say something or make a contribution, please utilize the chat for any questions or comments. But also you can raise your hand and mention if you want to make a contribution. During the session, we shall have moments where the facilitator will give you opportunity to either comment or ask a question and all that. So it's going to be really an interactive session for all of us. So briefly, this is it. I'll just introduce the facilitator at that moment. Then we shall have the sessions and then have the question and answer.
I work for Petals in the research department.
I'll request you mute yourself. If you want to do the introduction, please do it in the chat, but I'll request that you mute yourself. I just want briefly to just give you a hint on what the capacity building program is. The capacity building program is by the Sexual Productive Health and Rights Alliance, and briefly later on we shall know what the alliance is. That is designed to respond to the needs, to strengthen the needs of different individuals doing programming, to strengthen their role as equal players in sexual productive health and rights programming. So we all realize that all of us are at different levels of programming. So what we want to do is all of us, how can we at one moment reach an equal footing where we can all contribute to the different SRHR programming? How can we work hand in hand together? How can we support each other in trying to see that all of us are able to achieve our objectives and missions of the different organizations but projects? And the capacity building program will have two thematic areas. One is the core capacity building program, where we shall design, we're already in the process of designing modules that we shall have different specified trainings on different issues. But the thematic capacity building program is like this one that today we are having. So we shall have different themes. We shall have meaningful youth participation, gender transformative approaches. We shall have inclusive programming. We shall have M&E finance. So we shall have different thematic areas for each capacity building thematic program. Just briefly what the Alliance is. The SRHR Alliance is a consortium of 8 substantive members. And what we stand for is young people what young people need and what young people want regarding their SRHR. But also we work to ensure that vulnerable groups of young people, including adolescent girls and women, young people living with HIV, young people in emergency settings, young people with disabilities, and those are supported to claim and exercise their SRHR without any impediment and are free of any violence. So that's what the SRHR Alliance stands for. And just briefly, our vision is a society where all young people have equal access to SRHR information and services to make informed life choices in life, but also to strengthen SRHR participation, partnerships and networks that inspire young people to live healthy and productive lives. At the Alliance, we aim at, we are more doing the coordination, supporting capacity building, but also collaborative partnerships. How can we bring together different SRHR players who are working on different SRHR thematic areas like HIV, gender-based violence, and SRHR service provision, advocacy, so that they're all in one space. And these are our core values: collaborative partnerships. We work with equity, but also meaningful youth participation. And today we shall really have so much about the meaningful youth participation and also inclusiveness. Those two cores are very core values for us as an alliance. So at the moment, we have 8 members, substantive members, that is Richahan, Restless, UNIPA, Sehud, Straight Talk, Reproductive Health, Nafano, and FLEP. These are the founding members of the SRHR Alliance and have been implementing different programs under the SRHR Alliance for the last 10 years. So our strategic focus areas, we look at collaborative partnerships, but also capacity building and leadership. And this is one of the areas where we have capacity building and leadership, but also policy and advocacy is really very key for us. Research and evaluation, training and technical assistance, leveraging technologies, coalition building and convening, then outreach and dissemination programs, which are really, so you find that the Alliance at that level supports either different organizations or works with different partners to have different activities done. So how we do it, we have the multi-component and multi-sector approach where we bring together different players who are doing different interventions. What we look at, for example, if you're doing information and service delivery, how can you work together so that you can give the young person and the target a holistic service, both information and services. Meaningful youth participation and youth adult partnership that we shall look at today. Then we have the gender transformative approaches. Then capacity development is key. Then youth-led advocacy, youth-led social accountability, health entrepreneurship, and electronic and media health. So briefly, that is the SRHR Alliance Uganda. You can visit the website for more details. And if you have any inquiries, you can also email us so that we can answer any queries. So I want to introduce to you today's facilitator of the day. She's called Olga Namukuza-Daffin. She's a master trainer in sexual productive health and rights, who has experience in training for the last 4 years. But also she's a master trainer in meaningful youth participation and youth adult partnerships. And these are really very critical for us. But also she's a strong SRHR advocate at grassroots, at the national, regional, and global platforms. She has been advocating for SRHR all through, but she's also does programming for adolescent and young people's sexual productive health and rights, focusing majorly on marginalized groups and people living with HIV. So that is our facilitator of the day. And I'll end the slide here and I'll request her to take on from here. Thank you so much. If you have any comment or question, you could type it in the chat so that we could start off the session immediately. You're welcome, Olga.
Thank you so much, Bakshi, and thank you for those kind words introducing me. Like Bakshi mentioned, my name is Olga Namukuza, and I'm a master trainer in meaningful youth participation, but also in sexual and reproductive health and rights. And I'm here today to share with you, but also to learn from you in terms of how best can we really take advantage of meaningful youth participation to make sure that the programs that we are designing are really responding to the needs of the young people. So allow me to share my screen. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, Olga. Okay.
Okay. Just 1 minute. Yeah, so our session is going to be rather interactive. There is a bird that is on the screen, and I'm going to request Shayla Nakamate to tell us what she sees. Actually, Shayla, Christine, and Alex, in that order. I'll request each of you to just tell us what you see on the screen. Shayla, do you want to go first? Or Alex?
Yes, I can see a bird, and with the different colors, and it is looking behind the way how I can see it.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. How about Prudence? What do you see on the screen? Yes, is Prudence on the call? Yes, Prudence, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Okay, someone has typed that they have microphone issues in the chat, so I think you just.
Oh, okay. So maybe you can just type in your answer, but then as we wait, just like our colleague shared. Yeah, so this is a bird. What we are seeing on the screen is a bird, and it is an Akan proverb from Ghana. And it is basically here to give us a direction in terms of how we look at meaningful youth participation. It is a bird, just like our colleague has said, that is looking at the back. So we want to look at it and draw from the past in terms of how we can promote meaningful youth participation that is rooted in our cultural context. So the image of the bird is called a sankofa. It is an Akan proverb from Ghana, and it symbolizes a bird that turns to look back while still flying ahead. And the purpose of this is because it conveys the importance of reaching into the past for valuable lessons, insights, practices, and even culture, as culture undergoes transformation and the people embrace new ideas and new ways. So as we are discussing meaningful youth participation, for many people, it sometimes comes in as a new concept, and they think about it as something maybe the young people want to take over, or they are trying to redefine how the things are done. But the Sankofa is here to show us that we are not redefining things, but rather we are picking lessons from the past and then using that to move forward in a way that is much clearer, in a way that is much more transformational, in a way that's more embracing of the new ideas, but also not losing out on our past ideas. So going into a discussion of meaningful youth participation as a pillar to inclusive SRHR programming, I would like to ask, and this one is for everyone, so feel free to type in the chat box, yeah? From your organization, yeah, we have seen some people are coming from NGOs. We are seeing some people are coming from, there is someone from Bale Network, people living with HIV. We have someone from the School of Women and Gender in Makerere. So I want to ask you, from the different places that you come from, who is part of the leadership structures where you are? Yeah, who is part of the leadership structures? You can just type in the chat box, or if you're open, you can always just unmute yourself and share with us. Yes, Phoebe, you want to say something? Okay, so I think as we are waiting, this is going to be something that we all take part in, and then we can share our answers as we conclude our session. So who is part of the leadership structure? And then why are they in that structure? And what is their role in that structure? How are they supported to achieve their role? and who supports them in achieving that role. So moving on, we are looking at meaningful youth participation, meaning that young people can participate on equal terms with adults or work independently in all stages of programming, policy making, and organizations, design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the different projects that an organization can be running. So many times people wonder, how do you mean equal terms? Because it may be difficult to work on equal terms given that all of us have different job descriptions. But with meaningful youth participation, we are looking at what exactly are we bringing to the table and how are we sharing that responsibility. So the elements of meaningful youth participation are 5. We are looking at a freedom of choice. There has to be a freedom of choice. This is simplest in its way, whereby young people need to be able to decide on what they want to be involved in. They need to be able to decide on what they want to do. And their choices need not to be coerced. They need to come from themselves. That way they are much more appreciated, and that way it becomes easier for them to take them on and to actually stand by the consequences of those choices. Then for meaningful youth participation to be present, there has to be a voice. Young people need to be able to be heard. It's not enough for you to just have them in your structure, but they need to be heard. So are you listening to them? Are you taking on their ideas? Are they on the table with you making these decisions as you're doing the different things in your organization? And of course, there has to be information, because for someone to make their voice heard, for someone to have a choice, they need to be informed, and they need to have all of the information, not just bits and pieces of the information, but they need to be able to have all of the information on the table to be able to make a decision. So that then leads us into our next element, which is the decision-making power. So from the information, from the voice, from the freedom, then comes the decision-making power. Are young people able to decide? You know, even if it's something as basic as where are we going to implement this activity, even if it's something as basic as, you know, when deciding the date of the activity. So are they able to decide? And then, of course, that sums it all up with responsibility. Do young people actually have responsibility, or are they just in our structures to be just in our structures? You know, you may be there and you're saying, oh, we have 15 young people in our structure, but if you're to ask each of them what they do, you realize that each of them are doing the same work. So what kind of responsibility are the young people being given in the structure that you're in? Yeah, so moving on to forms of non-meaningful youth participation and meaningful youth participation. So for the rest, I'm going to be sharing with you. If you have any question, feel free to type in the chat box, or feel free to raise your hand. Or if you have any contribution, again, feel free to raise your hand and share with us your thoughts and your feelings about this discussion. Yes, so the first form of non-meaningful youth participation is what we term as manipulation. So for many people, they will wonder, you know, we're talking about meaningful youth participation, where we're bringing in terms like manipulation, because we have seen that there are times when young people are consistently manipulated into different things. Here, they are given a lot of information, and they, for the rest of the elements of meaningful youth participation, they are not present. So young people have all of this information, but then they don't have a voice, they don't have a responsibility, they don't have a decision-making power, and neither do they have a freedom to decide. I think many of us, if you are in primary school and you are lucky, there are times when there will be donors coming, if you are ever in a government school and there are donors coming, and then they dress you all up in clean uniforms and they polish you all, and you look so nice, and the donors come to see you seated there, you know, paraded, and you've been told that there are donors coming, so tell them all of these good things about the program and what we are benefiting. So you don't even know what you're doing, you don't exactly know who you're talking to, but because you have been told that you have to come and share what is happening in the school, then you come and start talking about that. So we have seen cases where many young people are manipulated into sharing a lot of things that they wouldn't have done if in other circumstances, if it were up to them. Then the second form of non-meaningful youth participation is what we are seeing as tokenism. Yeah, and with tokenism, we are again seeing that there are elements of meaningful youth participation that are present. And here, young people have information and they also have a freedom of choice, but they do not have a voice, neither do they have responsibility, and neither do they have decision-making power. So here, this is a case in point where, for instance, a young person is invited to give a speech, a powerful speech at a conference, and you're selected and you're informed that, oh, hey, Bakshi, you're going to go and you represent us as, you know, the adolescent girls and young women to give a speech on behalf of what we are going through. And then you say, okay, no problem, I will prepare something to, you know, share my experience. And then we tell you, no problem, you don't need to prepare anything. We are going to write for you the speech. Then we write down the speech and we give it to you and we tell you, read it word for word. Whether you believe in that speech, they are not your words. You're not even sure why we are giving it to you, but because you have been given an opportunity as a platform and you're being told that, you know, you need to go in this space, you're going to represent us, this is what you need to say, then you're manipulated in a way. So there are times when young people are, it has been tokenistic. Engaging young people has been done in a tokenistic way where they are given a small something just to keep them at bay. Something like, sometimes it can be a t-shirt, sometimes it can be some transport refund. Sometimes it can be an opportunity to even, you know, go for an international conference. That way you're able to, you know, keep at bay and not be able to, you know, raise a lot of havoc here. So we are seeing this as a tokenism, and it is really not a form of meaningful youth participation. And this is actually one of the things that we have to avoid as we are moving forward in our kind of programming for the young people. Yeah, so what do we actually look at as forms of meaningful youth participation? We are not saying, as we say, it is highly improbable that we shall ever be on equal terms, because even when you look at the five, you know, your 5 fingers, they are also not equal. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a responsibility for the hand. So it means that there have to be things that have to be put in place for youth participation to be meaningful. And the first form we are seeing is that young people are appointed a role and actually informed about their role. So here we are seeing that young people are given a freedom of choice. We are seeing that information is available. We are seeing that young people have a voice. We are seeing young people are responsible, although their decision-making power is limited. And here you're having examples where, for instance, you're involving young people in a project and they're coming on as peer educators and they're coming on as peer buddies or as peer volunteers. So they are coming in, they are given a freedom of choice, they have the information, they're able to engage in different ways, although their decision-making power may be limited. So we are saying that this is a form of meaningful youth participation. Then the next form of meaningful youth participation is that young people are actually consulted and informed. Yeah. So here we are saying that once young people are consulted and informed, they are given a lot of information. Yeah. They are given the voice. Their voices are always heard. They are given a freedom of choice for them to decide whether or not to be a part of the processes. The responsibility is also high, and also the decision-making power is also there. This is why you're seeing youth groups that are coming together, for instance, think tanks that are coming up that are youth-led and for young people and by young people. Here is why you're seeing, you know, the different consultations coming into play in terms of what do young people want and how do they want it. If you remember, during COVID, there was a time when the Global Fund released some money and they were saying that these are funds for the youth response activities to the Global Fund. And I remember youth-led organizations coming together to mobilize themselves, to work together, to consult, to, you know, come together and grab information and give things here and there. And in the end, the grant was actually approved and the money was given for the young people. So we are seeing that with such processes where young people are actually consulted and informed, we have very open process, we have very positive results because young people are able to get what they need and what they require at that moment. Then we are seeing another form of meaningful youth participation as one that is adult-led, but having shared decisions with young people. As we said, meaningful youth participation is not about young people coming on to take on a show or coming on to do things the youth way and forget about the adults. No, it's about learning like the Sankofa does, picking lessons from the back and then taking them forward. So meaningful youth participation also has aspects of adult-led shared decisions with young people. Here is why you're having organizations like the SRHR Alliance that is led by adults, but the decisions in the organization are shared with the young people. The way of programming is also shared with the young people. And here we are seeing a lot of freedom of choice. We are seeing there is voice. We are seeing young people having a decision-making power, and we are also seeing them having responsibility to be able to contribute to the process. So this form of meaningful youth participation is very common in many of the spaces that we are dealing with. And it is the one that many of us are really most adapted to, the one where the adult is leading, but they're having shared decisions with the young people. Then we're also having another form. Now, this is the other way around, where it is the youth-led, but then shared decisions with adults. And this is the, I think, the most practical form of meaningful youth participation, where you're having young people at the front line, but they're being guided by adults. They're sharing decisions with the adults. They're going back to the adults, to go about ideas, to co-create with them. But at the end of the day, it is a youth initiative. So this is actually the most recommended form of meaningful youth participation. And it is the one that we would like to put forward in terms of programming for SRHR and also for HIV programs. As we are designing programs for adolescents and young people, it's very important that we have youth-led, but of course sharing decisions with adults, because we cannot downplay the role of adults in programming for young people. Yeah, so there is now a form of meaningful youth participation also where it is youth-led completely and adults have no decision-making power. These are structures where you find, youth councils. These are structures where you find, for instance, youth advisory committees. These are youth-led organizations where it is the young people, actually, young people for young people, taking on our show and pushing our agenda, ensuring that, our voices are on the table, the responsibilities with us, the decision-making power is with us, the information is mostly with us, and at the end of the day, we have a freedom of choice to decide whether or not to engage. And I believe this is where, many of us as youth advocates fall, many of us as team leaders for youth-led organizations also fall. Then moving on, progressing what we talked about in terms of youth-adult partnership. So for meaningful youth participation to work, for it to be effective, for young people to really be at the front line and be fully supported, we have to acknowledge the importance of youth-adult partnerships. Young people do not exist in isolation. Even if it's from like a child-led family, you will find that a young person will interface with an adult at a certain point in their life, maybe as a teacher, maybe as a health worker, maybe as, as someone from church or someone from the mosque, or someone in the taxi, or someone on the road, or someone from the market. At a certain point in life, a young person has to interact with an adult. And we are saying that for meaningful youth participation to really be practical, there has to be youth-adult partnership. It doesn't mean that young people have to be on the same level as adults. No, it means that the young people acknowledge that adults have a lot to bring to the table, and the adults as well acknowledge that young people also have a lot to offer. So here we are saying that there is a lot of information that is given to the young people. There is a lot of voice. The voices of the young people is heard. There is a freedom of choice, and there is responsibility, and equally decision-making power is present. And I believe this is also where, many of the SRHR programs are, where young people are working with adults. So it's mainly the adults who are deciding the programs and most of the stuff, but you're saying that there are aspects of youth-adult partnerships coming in together to co-create, to design strategies, to design programs, and to also be effective in terms of modeling programs for young people. Yeah. So with inclusive participation, what exactly do we mean? With inclusive participation, we mean creating opportunities for marginalized groups. We mean creating safe spaces. We mean recognizing and learning about each other. And this is the adults and the young people. We mean cross-learning about issues and agenda, the common and the different needs. For us as adults and young people, it doesn't mean that we have to agree, but then also we don't have to agree to disagree to be able to exist. It means that I need to be able to understand what you are talking about, and you need to be able to understand where I'm coming from. And then that is how we're going to be able to cross-learn. That is how we are going to be able to then have a strategic focus on an advocacy issue that is important to especially to the vulnerable youth. That is how we are going to have adults as advocates. That is how we are going to have adults as allies and partners for young people to be able to bring this forward. And of course, most importantly, there has to be inclusive consultation and evidence generation. Young people's voices have to always be heard in these processes. Not to say that they have to own the processes, but if it is practically for things that are concerning them, designing policies, frameworks, best practices, programs that are targeting young people, then it is
Hello, Olga. Are you still there? Okay, we seem to have lost Olga, but let me just try to get her so that she can get back. But in the meanwhile, if you have, okay, Olga, you're back.
Yeah, my apologies. The rain, I think, has messed up a big part of the internet. Yeah, but yes. Yes. So we were talking about the benefits of working with young people and, of course, the benefits of working with adults. So we are seeing that, of course, young people have innovations, you know. They are very creative and they're innovative. They have the social media and the modern technology skills. They are strong in disseminating messages. Give a young person a message and they're going to spread it across, you know, all different kind of channels, WhatsApp groups, radio, TVs. You know, they have energy, they learn quickly, they are fast decision makers, they are open-minded, passionate, you know, and they're crucial to the movement, because if we're talking about a youth movement, then we have to work with the young people. And then, of course, the young people are experts by experience. They are living the lived experience of a young person. So they are the ones who are best placed to tell us what is happening, how it's happening, and how we can actually maneuver it. But then on the other hand, we're also seeing benefits of working with the adults. So we are saying that the adults have the power to increase young people's access to stakeholders and decision-making processes. Here we are seeing that, for instance, the technocrats, they're already working in ministries, they're already working with NGOs. So if young people are able to work with them, it means that they'll be able to open doors for young people to have their voices heard. Then they also have the power to give weight to advocacy messages. We can be here talking about, you know, let me say, if we are promoting the use of condoms among university students. If it is me and you who are talking about it, it can be okay. Of course, we have our mileage and we can get our numbers. But imagine, for instance, getting a person like, you know, the First Lady to talk about it. If you're to talk about sexuality education, in Uganda, there was a lot of opposition on sexuality education. But the moment the First Lady came out to say that, you know, this is a good concept, this is something that can be molded to fit into the Ugandan context, then sexuality education became acceptable, and now we even have a national framework. So the adults have the power to give weight to our advocacy messages and also bring the young people into the space. And then they also have access to strategic information. Again, by virtue of the fact that they have been doing this work, they are living these experiences, you're going to find that they have the math skills, they have the knowledge of codes of conduct in advocacy spaces. You know, they tell you where is the balance between advocacy and activism. And, you know, they're also protectors of the young people. Now, the adults have expressed that many times they are guiders. You know, they guide young people, they are mentors, you know, they are peer educators, they are different things. And they also bring stability to the work, you know, helping young people to understand how they need to be placed. So we realize, and I think we both affirm that the benefits of working with the young people and with the adults are far-reaching. So if you have any other benefits that you would like to share in terms of working with young people and benefits of working with adults, please feel free to raise your hand and share your opinion, or alternatively, you can share in the chat box and also share with us your opinion in terms of the benefits of working with the adults and the young people. Yeah, so if we are to progress in terms of how do we see the roles of both the young people and the adults in a proper, meaningful youth participation setting. As we said at the beginning, we want adults and young people to be equal partners, but we agree that equality doesn't mean that me and you have to be the same. It just means that we all have to bring something to the table that is within our capacity. So me as a young person, I bring what I can to the table, and an adult also brings what they can to the table. So that is what we are trying to look at here. So we are saying that young people bring on implementation of public campaigns, public support. You're going to find young people are able to march on the streets, they're able to walk distances, they're able to, you know, make noise on social media about, you know, publicizing and raising, you know, social mobilization is something that the young people are good at. And we're also seeing that on the other side, the adults are also good at advocacy with high-level stakeholders. They know the language, they know the politics, they know, you know, what to say, they know how to dot the I's and how to cross the T's. So it is very, very important that we then look at how do we bring both skills to share, to improve advocacy. Then we are saying that young people are practical in organization of platforms for advocacy events. You know, they can organize an advocacy event. If you're to talk about the youth-led organizations, they're able to organize any kind of event, beauty pageants, MDD events, sports events, any kind of festivals, you know, anything can be organized by young people as an advocacy event. And then we are seeing that the adults, on the other hand, have ways of organizing the formal platforms. They know which hotels to go to. They will know what kind of language. They will know what protocols to use. So if we bring both of these skills together, it means that we can really be able to harness something that is really beautiful. Then we are also seeing about sensitizing and mobilizing other youth. Then, of course, the adults are important in mobilizing stakeholders and other peers, because with young people, it's important for us to also acknowledge that we can mobilize each other, but even if we talk to each other, we do not have the power to change status quo. So it means that we need to be able to talk to the stakeholders who are brought by the adults. We're also seeing that they are participating and contributing in advocacy activities. This is also something that we're just talking about, that the adults are opening doors for us to take the first step as the young people. Then the young people are being key in organizing and engaging in youth consultations, and the adults are also being they're receiving us as young people in these spaces. I know now for a fact that the different technical working groups at the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education will do what they'll do, but they'll always ensure to invite young people to the spaces. So it means that they're also seeing that it is very important to have us on board. Then the development of advocacy products. This goes both ways for both the adults and the young people. Creation, innovation of ideas is something that goes both ways. And also regional and international advocacy goes for both the adults and both the young people. Of course, each coming on with their different skills on how they deliver, but each going for that. And then, of course, the adults are always sharing knowledge. They are transferring knowledge to the young people, but we're also seeing that young people are teaching them about status quo. You know, it was very interesting to see the president in the recent campaigns coming out to speak the language of the ghetto, to speak the different language of the young people on the street. So it means that, you know, even the adults are realizing that we need to relate to the young people. So we need to be able to learn certain things from them. They are learning things around social media and how to, you know, use the digital innovations for help. So it's really important that both parties realize that there is a lot of knowledge sharing going on, and also acknowledging that both have to learn and unlearn, and also to relearn from the other party. Then if we're to share briefly, if there are no questions, I would like to continue. Some members are saying they would like to share the presentation. That's not a problem, it will be shared to you. Okay, so moving on to lessons learned from the Get Up Speak Out program. This was a program that was implemented by the SRHR Alliance, and I would like to say this was the one that really brought out the meaningful youth participation, that really pushed all of the partners within the Alliance to acknowledge and know that young people need to have a space on the table. They need to have a good space on the table. Their voices need to be heard. So some of the lessons from GUSO. So the Get Up Speak Out program had the biggest strategy was to increase young people's participation in decision making. So we were looking at all structures of decision making, from the district level to the national level to the family level. Actually, that's where we started, from individual level, at the health facility, in the school environment, and then most importantly in the organizations where we were, and then also in the ministries, the places where decisions are actually being made about policies and frameworks that determine our health. So part of our strategies was measuring and mainstreaming meaningful youth participation. And this involved training of trainers, including myself, in terms of how do we actually understand and put together the concept of meaningful youth participation. So we came together and a manual was developed and other frameworks were developed. And we actually have indicators for meaningful youth participation. So after this, we'll also share with you, and you can also be using it in your program to just check. There's a checklist where you can just go and tick and see whether you're actually meaningfully engaging young people or there is actually something that you can do to improve. Then we also looked at it for building effective youth-adult partnerships. You know, we needed to learn, how do we both learn from each other? How do we not step on each other's toes? So of course it involved a lot of capacity strengthening of the young people, being able to build their capacity in youth-led advocacy, youth-led monitoring, giving them the skills and the information that they needed to be able to take these informed decisions. Then of course, giving them the best of the best, which was the youth-led advocacy, giving them the platform to express themselves, giving them the spaces to be able to represent other young people, giving them the chance to voice out what the other young people need. And at the end of the day, this just led to enabling out at the front line. We have young people coming out as champions, because we know that it is only through that our young people will be meaningfully engaged. So the building of youth-adult partnerships, we have the example of the youth country coordinator. The youth country coordinator is a young person aged 15 to 25 who operates at the level of the country alliance and acts as a focal point for all young people and staff. So the YCC's core responsibility is to promote and facilitate meaningful youth engagement across the program and also serve as a sparring partner of the national coordinator. So it is really a relationship, a symbiotic relationship between the youth country coordinator and the national coordinator, working together on equal terms, you know, co-creating activities, you know, sitting on the same table, sitting in the same office, even practically, to really come together to show young people that there is a voice that was constantly there. And this really helped to shape the program because it really ensured that the youth voice was always had at all of the stages within the implementation. Then, of course, the biggest success was it was an effective way of maintaining youth leadership, spearheading meaningful youth engagement within the alliance, and also within, because YCCs sometimes became interim NPCs. But then, of course, there was a very big challenge, you know, the differences in the relationship of YCC versus NPC, because you have to acknowledge that the YCC being a young person who is aged between 18 to 25, if you're looking at the Ugandan education structure, this is someone who is fresh out of school and has probably 1 year of experience, if you're lucky. Or if they are lucky, they have been volunteering from a time before. And then the NPC is already a qualified level, actually even crossing over to master's level. So you find that it sometimes became difficult, the relationship. Then the biggest lessons were, of course, there is need to deepen youth engagement, building on the existing levels of youth representation and influence, to deepen engagement in all organization domains. Then, of course, deepening the youth-adult partnerships, mentorship and guidance for young people, helping young people to transition into adult roles by mentoring them, by guiding them, but also providing the informal support for them to age out of youth leadership. I think the biggest challenge for us as young people is that aging out, where you're no longer young and you actually have to accept that you're no longer young. And then the biggest challenge comes in because you're not exactly also an adult. So you're just a young adult, just for lack of a better word, floating in space and sometimes not able to understand your ways. So it is important that we help young people to transition out of these spaces. That way they'll be able to leave a space for the other young people. And then most importantly is diversity and inclusivity. We have to acknowledge that young people all come from different spaces. We have to acknowledge that they are all having different issues and those different issues can all be solved by different things. So it is upon us to really come to the table and say, how are we dealing with the different young people in their diverse ways? How are we supporting them? How are we meeting them at their need to be able to support them and give them that necessary support that they need for us to ensure that there is meaningful youth engagement and also meaningful youth participation. Then, of course, we also learned about innovative tracking. because it's important to measure youth contributions and influence. It's important for us to understand what contribution in this program, if the success of the program, what contribution can be attributed to the young people, and how can we link progress in meaningful youth participation to broader impacts of adolescent and SRHR youth programming in Uganda. Then, of course, looking at sustaining the YCC model, it has actually been adopted in many other structures, including the model of the Youth Advisory Committee, where we are having a youth model, young people, volunteers coming in to advise the Alliance on how to design programs, on how to do its work, on how to design interventions, and even how to organize the different things that are coming on board. So then we are seeing that this has been a very good investment for the Alliance. And then it leads me to my next question in terms of why should organizations invest in meaningful youth participation. There could be a number of reasons that people are thinking about in terms of why organizations should invest in meaningful youth participation. But as you think about yours and prepare to write them down in the chat box, I would like to share with you our thoughts in terms of why organizations and institutions should invest in meaningful youth participation. We have seen that meaningful youth participation has really been something that has benefited the Alliance. The different successes that I have just shared with you are a point of reflection for us to see that it has helped the Alliance to grow, not only as an organization that is doing youth programming, but also as an organization that is working for young people and working in an environment in Uganda where a majority of the people in this country are young people. So with that information and with that knowledge, I would like to come back to you and ask, why should organizations invest in meaningful youth participation? And here I'm just going to ask only two people to share their views. I'm seeing Tony Muzira, he's a very vocal youth advocate. Tony, would you please share with us your thoughts on why you think organizations should invest in a meaningful youth participation? And then can we also hear from Nora, also another powerful youth advocate? We also have Cynthia, Christine, Dr. Ben, Godfrey, Kenny. Guys, why should we invest in meaningful youth participation? Why should organizations invest in meaningful youth participation? We can start with you, Tony. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Olga, for that brilliant presentation. And yeah, for me, I just have one key point is it's important to engage, to have MYP in the different youth organizations. According to your presentation, you're trying to bring the relationship between how young people can work with the adults. For example, I'll use the experience of, let's say, policy advocacy. There's no way you can come up with the adolescent programming if you don't engage young people, design their different programs and make them part of the implementation. So you won't have the clear picture of exactly what should be in that policy. So I think it's important to invest in MYP because it helps you come with a clear programming of the different programs that you're intending to, benefit the beneficiaries, most especially young people, those that are staying in rural areas at national level, global level, regional, and all that. And it also helps them to, advance and enhance their skills. For example, you've given us a toolkit, a cocktail of different benefits of MYP. So it will improve in their skills. And I like the structure of the alliance that you were talking about, that sometimes, I don't know when, but we saw you talked about that where the YCC can be as in the interim NPC. So you can see that because there has been this already relationship between the two, so the YCC can, fall into the shoes of the NPC because it has a lot of programming and all that. But because the young person has been, given the skills, has been given the opportunities, so they will be able to, to take part into.
It's 15 hours.
Yeah, so I think MYP is important in terms of program development, in terms of coming up with the right outcomes of the different programs that we're doing in organizations, and also giving young people an opportunity, like how they say that if it's not with us, then it's not us. So yeah, I think it's really important to invest it. And I think this is a very good opportunity for most of the youth leaders who are in this, on this call, to go back to the organizations and restructure and see if really are they implementing MYP in their different organizations. I think it's if it's not, then it's the right it's the right time for them to do that. It will improve their programming. Thank you so much. Though you caught me unaware, you caught me off guard, but those are my thoughts. And yeah, I think it's really important to invest in MYP. Thank you so much, Olga.
I think my internet is really bad. I lost you for a bit there.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. I think it's the weather that's messing up the afternoon internet. Yes, Alex, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Olga, for the presentation. I think there are many reasons why we should invest in youth participation in the organization. One of them is these people, when they are involved, the planning will be proper. For example, their felt need can be properly addressed. For example, safe spaces for the youth when they are receiving the services, especially like for health services in health facilities. Youth-friendly corners. This one will help the planning very well. And then two, the issue will now be about the awareness. Their increased awareness will continue because these are the people who will be participating themselves in the program. And then the other issue is about the mobilization of resources and utilization. You know, when you involve them, these are people who have the resources. Nobody should say the youth don't have resources. They have the knowledge, they have the skills. So when they are involved in the organization, the resources that are supposed to be used can be what? Can be used effectively. And then the other issue is about advocacy. You see, when youth are involved, it means a youth to youth. It gives us more information, and always their problem is always addressed, other than leaving them out in the what? In the organization. So those are the issues that I look at it. It is very important to involve the youth in the planning in the organization for now. Thank you.
Yes, Alex.
Okay, Olga, did we lose you?
Yeah, I think we lost him. The internet today.
No. It's actually we lost you.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah. Because he had concluded and he was talking about the resources young people have in terms of knowledge, skills, but also time availability and all that, which was, I think, something very critical. There's a message from Christine. People involved in leadership structures at government agencies, NGOs. I think she was looking at the first question you asked. Then Alice Akrut says it makes organizations that focus on young people more relevant. Okay, the others are talking about the presentation. It's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, do we have any other person who wants to make a contribution?
Yes, thank you so much. Can I say something?
Yes, Dr. Ben.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Olga, for that in-depth presentation. It has been really so insightful and having a lot of content. But me, I'm looking at MYP majorly in terms of capacity building, upbringing these youth, whenever we are involving them, right at the inception stage of our programs, interventions that are really mainly focusing on them, it gives us an opportunity to groom them in matters of sustainability when it comes to programs, rather than us taking interventions and imposing them on these youth, and they tend to, hit dead ends, and we tend not to get the proper project outcomes, that is in terms of programming. Then I also look at MYP being one of the major principles or fundamental factors that are going to help organizations grow, because there is always that time when one individual is supposed to move and another one comes in. I'm looking at these very young, the youth who come in when they're volunteers. You talked about volunteers, you know, we build their capacities right away from the time they enter into the organization, not until they assume high, you know, position in the organization. And me seeing them, you know, sail through all the levels of administration, programmatic, you know, interventions, and also gaining a lot of, you know, knowledge as regards, you know, administration, program designing, and all of that will help us so much to, you know, sustain and maintain the dynamics of these organizations. And to me, if we continue to implement programs when we sideline or we tokenize meaningful youth participation, I think we're about to hit a dead end. And I think we'll not really go much far in achieving what we want. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ben. Nora's hand was up. Can we have Nora?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Mine will not differ so much from what Ben has said, but meaningful youth participation, to start with, is a human right. So it only makes sense for us to involve young people right from the start, because many times we do design these projects or have activities and we just bring the young people on board without maybe inquiring from them what their thoughts are, or how exactly should this particular project be implemented. And also, many of these young people have brilliant ideas, and the fact that they are in their natural sense, if I use that, they don't usually have reservations because they will speak exactly what's on their mind. So if we do engage them with their creative minds, we will be able to reach out to so many people with information, but also find interesting and innovative ways of relaying information to particular young people. And then the other thing is, most of us just tick the boxes when it comes to young people. We do not build these young people's capacities or find out from them what exactly they would want, because we look at them as homogeneous people or a package, yet they all have different issues or challenges that they experience, and we can use those experiences or challenges that they face to design brilliant projects, or also address the challenges that other young people could be facing. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Olga, any conclusions?
Yeah, yes, there is also another comment in the chat from Christine that says MYP helps generations to keep informed and involved in SRHR. It keeps societies engaged in capacity building. And Shayla is saying MYP gives platforms for empowering other youth and publicity. So in turn, there is sustainable organization growth. Very true. All of these are very powerful points that we're raising. As we conclude our conversation, I would like to say that for meaningful youth participation, it is something that is of late turning into no longer a choice for us as organizations, because unless you're going to die with a vision, there have to be young people who are going to also take it on. It is not just about the young people taking on your vision, but it's also about how exactly are you preparing them to do this work? How exactly are you building their capacity? How exactly are you, strengthening their capacity, giving them platforms, exposing them to different learning things, mentoring them, guiding them, and actually counseling them for different things for them to be able to take on these positions. So MYP, like Tony is saying, contributes to a young person's development, in becoming more confident, skilled, connected, and empowered as a young person who is an active agent of change in their own communities. So we are saying that MYP has a benefit from the individual, that it builds the individual as an empowered person who is able to fight for their rights and also fight for the rights of others. And then we are saying that this continues in an ecological kind of way, to say that it also serves the family, the community, the environment that we're all living at, continuing to the global level, to say that we can no longer run away from the young people. They are the biggest population that we have right now in Uganda. So it means that we either harness their good, or we are going to deal with the consequences of not harnessing their energy for the right reasons. So for me, I would like to say thank you so much. Thank you for having interest in meaningful youth participation. Thank you for always believing in the young people and believing in the different work that they can do. Many of us have seen organizations being developed by young people, but are now multi-billion organizations. We have seen many initiatives started by young people that are now solving problems across the globe, solving problems in the entire country. And this is something that has to be celebrated. So thank you so much for continuing to have an interest in MYP. And I hope that this is knowledge that you translate to other young people, to other people in your spaces, and also take it into implementation to actually apply it in your programming for young people and also for adolescents. For us, we are always available. Resources, if for any kind of reference in terms of MYP, the manuals are available, the frameworks are all available, and as well as the presentations, although they are copyright of the Alliance, particularly for the presentation, but the rest of the information can always be shared with you so that you can also integrate it into your programming. So thank you for sharing your afternoon with me. Over to you, Bakshi.
All right, thank you so much, Olga. Flowers to you. It was a good one. And from the feedback, we really see it has been a powerful presentation. Like Olga has mentioned, we are going to share with you the different materials on meaningful youth participation. And there's also a specific toolkit that you can tick off. It's a checklist. You tick off and see whether you're actually doing meaningful youth participation. Thank you so much, all of you who have joined in. We shall have our next webinar in the coming month. So we shall be sharing on what the next topic is. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.